Syrian President Bashar al-Assad tricked his army officials into believing that Russian military support was on its way to help government forces before secretly fleeing into Russia, Reuters reported on Thursday, citing over a dozen people familiar with the matter. Hours before the opposition groups captured capital Damascus, Assad convened a meeting of about 30 military and security chiefs at the defense ministry, assuring the participants that Kremlin support was coming and called on ground forces to continue the resistance. Moreover, after the meeting, Assad summoned his media advisor Buthaina Shaaban to his home to write him a speech. However, the advisor did not find the president in his home. Assad flew to Moscow from Syrian airbase on December 8 in an escape that seems to be a last-minute decision and was orchestrated by Russian intelligence agents. According to the report, Assad did not even inform his younger brother Maher about his plan to flee the country. Maher later flew to Moscow separately. Assad's cousins Ehab and Eyad Makhlouf were also left behind as insurgents captured Damascus. Assad's wife and 3 children had already left Syria for Moscow. The Syrian leader had been on an official visit in Russia on November 28 after the rebels' capture of northern province of Aleppo. However, Kremlin did not respond positively to Assad's pleas for Russian intervention, 3 regional diplomats said. According to Hadi al-Bahra, the head of Syrian main opposition abroad, Assad did not convey the realities of the situation to his aides in Syria after his Moscow trip. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Wednesday, commenting on the situation in Syria, that Russia's priority was the war in Ukraine. It should be noted that Bashar al-Assad's ousting by Syrian rebels ended Assad family's decades-long dynastic rule. Israeli troops were seen continuing to operate inside a UN demilitarized buffer zone between the occupied Golan Heights and Syria on Friday. The buffer zone was established after Israel seized the Golan Heights from Syria in the 1973 war. Following last week's overthrow of President Bashar Assad, Israel moved its troops across the so-called Alpha Line established with the 1974 ceasefire. Israel has also been striking targets inside Syria. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said strikes are necessary to keep the weapons from being used against Israel following the Syrian government's collapse. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres condemned all actions violating the 1974 ceasefire agreement between the 2 countries that remains in force. The UN chief called on the parties to uphold the agreement and end all unauthorized presence in the area of separation and refrain from any action undermining the ceasefire and stability in the Golan Heights, the spokesman said on Thursday. Syria ran one of the most oppressive police states in the Middle East during 5 decades of Assad family rule. Syrians have flocked to the infamous prisons where the Assad regime is estimated to have held tens of thousands of detainees, desperately looking for their loved ones. Some have been released alive, others were identified among the dead, and thousands more have not yet been found. After the overthrow of the Assad regime, the people are finding and punishing the officials who oppressed them. Another image has been circulating on social networks about this. Someone is caught again and is publicly beaten and taken away. It's claimed to be a former Assad officer or something. Nevertheless, mob rule is not a healthy state for society. Recall, Syria's Islamist rebel leader vowed to pursue former senior government officials responsible for torture and war crimes, a day after he began talks on the transfer of power following President Bashar al-Assad's ouster. Assad fled Syria as the Islamist-led opposition alliance swept into the capital Damascus, bringing a spectacular end on Sunday to 5 decades of brutal rule by his clan. He oversaw a crackdown on a democracy movement that erupted in 2011, sparking a war that killed at least 500,000 people and forced half the country to flee their homes, millions of them finding refuge abroad. We will not hesitate to hold accountable the criminals, murderers, security and army officers involved in torturing the Syrian people, rebel leader Abu Muhammad al-Golani, now using his real name Ahmed al-Shara, said in a statement on Telegram. We will offer rewards to anyone who provides information about senior army and security officers involved in war crimes, he said, adding the incoming authorities would seek the return of officials who have fled abroad.
اللي بعده يلا اللي بعده يا شباب هاي جبل يا شباب